my name is Dr. Lisa Rollins, and I'm a member of the journalism faculty at Ashford University. Today I would like to present a lesson to you on attribution. Attribution is a very important aspect of journalistic writing, and the first thing we need to do is define what attribution is. As you may or may not know, attribution is giving credit to your sources. In your news stories, whether they're broadcast or print, you need to always give credit to your sources. There are three types of sources that we use in journalistic writing. These are personal sources, which are the interviews that you personally conduct. Second, stored sources. Stored sources are things that can be stored, just as it indicates, such as police reports, fire reports, studies, surveys, press releases, or other articles that you cull from to create your article. Thirdly, first-hand observation. This is what you, as a journalist or reporter, sees firsthand or observes. You have to be really careful when using stored sources in your stories to avoid bias. For example, if you are an entertainment reporter and doing a concert review, it is completely acceptable to observe what fans are doing, count how many people are in the audience, and verify that with a facility manager at the site. And those would be good examples of how to use first-hand observation to avoid bias. Now that we've reviewed what attribution is, which is giving credit to where you get your sources in a news story, and we've also reviewed the types of sources, I would like to move on to the preferred verb of attribution, which is said. In your news stories, you should use said versus says, according to Associated Press style. If you're writing for print and online especially, you should stick with said. If you're writing for broadcast, which is active voice, it's okay to use says. But our focus here today is print and online writing, and therefore your preferred verb of attribution will always be said. You do have a selection of words to choose from for attribution, such as added, explained, continued, shared, remarked, and noted. This isn't an inclusive list, it's just a sampling of some of the more popular verbs of attribution. But you should always remember to begin your attribution with said. It is perfectly fine to use said each and every time in your news story, especially as a beginning writer. If you decide to deviate and use one of these other verbs of attribution, be sure that you're using it correctly. Be sure if you have a quote and someone is explaining something to you that they're truly explaining it. Otherwise, you would not use the verb of attribution explained. They might be sharing something with you. So you would say they shared something with you. Look at what each word means. Use precision in your word choice when it comes to your verbs of attribution. But again, your best bet is to always stick with said and use said first. This is Associated Press style preference. In terms of stated, which is a verb of attribution that students and beginning journalists commonly tend to want to use instead of said, you have to be very careful when you use it. If you consult your Associated Press style book, you'll see that stated as a verb of attribution is used only in formal situations, such as when the President delivers his State of the Union address. So when in doubt, consult your AP book in terms of using stated. And again, you're not going to put an S on these words. You're not going to use adds, explains, continues, shares, remarks, or noted. We want to keep our writing for print in third person, and we want it to correlate with the verb said. So you'll always have ed on the end of these in terms of your print writing. Now that we've reviewed some of the terms that you could use for verbs of attribution, and we've stressed that said, not says, is the preferred verb of attribution, I would like to talk to you about when you can use according to as a verb of attribution. This is commonly used in news stories, both print and broadcast, as a verb of attribution, but it's not always used correctly. When used correctly, according to can be used only with stored sources, not with people. So a good rule to remember is if your source has a heartbeat, don't use according to with it. You would need to use said or one of the other verbs of attribution. Again, use according to as a verb of attribution with stored sources. For example, 6 people were injured in the bar fight according to the police report. My verb of attribution here is according to, and I'm giving credit to my source, which is a police report. A police report is a stored source, and it is perfectly appropriate to use according to with all stored sources, but not with people Remember, if it's a heartbeat, don't use according to, use said. To conclude this lesson on attribution, I'd like to end by talking about the preferred order of attribution, meaning what is the order that you can list your attribution in a news story. According to Associated Press and the rules of journalistic writing, the preferred order of attribution is subject-verb, such as he said, she said. He and she are your subjects, and your verb, which is your preferred verb of attribution, is said. When you're writing a news story, be sure that you always use subject-verb unless you are following the guidelines for reversing the order of attribution. Here's an example of how to use subject-verb in a sentence properly. The concert was completely awesome, Danny Brown said. Danny Brown is our subject, and our verb is said. And this sentence follows the rules for the order of attribution that is preferred in journalistic writing. If you want to reverse the order of attribution and use a verb and then your subject, you have to ensure that you're giving your reader or your consumer of news more identifying information about the subject. For example, we'll take this same sentence and give you more information about our subject, and this will allow us to use said as our verb of attribution before using subject-verb. The concert was completely awesome, said Danny Brown, 18, who lives in Logan County. So we're not just telling the reader that Danny Brown thought the concert was awesome. We're telling the reader more identifying information about Danny Brown, including his age and where he lives. When you want to reverse the order of attribution and use verb, subject, you always have to give more information, whether it's someone's title, their age, where they live, or something else. I hope this video has been helpful to you in learning more about attribution in your journalistic writing.